So, hello and welcome to the Action Coach Business Spotlight. I'm Lorna McAtear, and along with my husband, John Boggis, we run Action Coach Cambridge. And what we do is we help business owners across the Cambridge region. Now, today with me, I'm delighted to have Declan Fitzhenry of the Citystay Group. So, welcome, Declan.
Hello, thanks for having me.
You are more than welcome. So, listen, time is precious. Let's kick off. Give me some background about the Citystay Group.
Okay, so the Citystay Group is really a culmination of the previous 15 years of trading and experience that we've developed over time. Back in 2008, there was two couples who are still very much involved with the business, Neil and Angela Fernandez, and Kevin Hill and Karen Goodsell, who between them came up with the idea of setting up a service department provider, which was a relatively new idea into the accommodation market at the time. I think the industry is still quite juvenile, but they came up with the idea of setting this business up where we could offer accommodation into apartments as opposed to hotels. So looking for an alternative type of accommodation to business travelers that were coming into Cambridge. And as with any small business or as with any business that starts, the four of them did everything from the sales, marketing, finance, housekeeping, operations, maintenance. Yeah, it's just the way that, all small businesses start. You roll your sleeves up and you get stuck in.
Absolutely.
And over the years, they started to develop a reputation for, delivering a really good service. And they started with a portfolio of 4 apartments, and organically that's grown to the point where we are today, where we manage a portfolio of 132 apartments across Cambridge, along with a 22-bedroom apart hotel in the centre of Cambridge, which I'm sat in now. We support a staff of 45 people, and we've developed into the Citystay Group. The Citystay Group is the umbrella term that we give to the 5 brands that we operate, one of which is Citystay UK, as you mentioned, one of which is called Checked In, which offers slightly longer term accommodation. We have the Regent Apart Hotel that I'm sat in here today. We have Inclusive, which is our global booking agency. And we have Cambridge Clean Sheets, which is slightly different. It's a laundry business, but it predominantly services the hospitality industry. We understood the challenges of, laundering your own pillowcases, sheets, bed linen, towels, etc., and faced some operational challenges at the start of Citystay UK, and saw an opportunity actually to do that better. So we set up our own in-house business doing that. And that's really the journey that each of those brands has been on. They've grown out of identifying an opportunity or a requirement in the marketplace to add a service or add a brand. And each one of those has added and added and added until we've got to where we are today. And then we culminated them with the overarching Citystay Group. And yeah, that's where we are. I think the 4 people who set the business up are still involved with the business to varying different degrees, but what that brings with it is those values, that ethos and those ethics that the business was initially successful on are still what drives the business today. So we're still led by that, openness, honesty, trustworthiness, outstanding customer care. Those are the cornerstones and the foundations of all of the brands that we operate, and will continue to be so.
That's brilliant, Declan. Thank you. And how long have you been in business?
So I've been with the Citystay Group for 9 years now. But as I said, initially it was set up in 2008. So we're coming into our 15th year now. But I joined on a temporary contract with the company in 9 years ago now. So it'd have been 2014. As a sales and reservations executive, and yeah, that really time's flown since then, and I've seen the organization grow and develop, and I've been very fortunate enough to grow and develop with the organization myself, to the position where we are today.
Oh, that's brilliant. So Declan, tell me, how did you get into this then? I mean, did it start off when you worked in the reservations and it just kind of grown from there, or is it something that you've always enjoyed doing, or?
So I'll start by saying one thing. I think hospitality is something that is in you or it's not. Okay, so people that work within hospitality will always tell you, I just fell into it and I fell in love with it and I've stayed within it ever since. And that's quite often the kind of career trajectory that you see with people that work within hospitality businesses. So if you'd have asked me when I was 16, 17, 18, do you want to work in hospitality? Absolutely not. I didn't really understand what it was all about. I didn't know that there was something inside of me that wanted to do this. So when I left sixth form, I was took a year out of studying before I started at university, and I traveled to New Zealand, played cricket over there for a little while, developed some life experiences. And by the time I got to university, I'd kind of been out of that sort of studying environment for a little while, and I wasn't ready to go back into it. I didn't enjoy going back into it. And I'd come from an academic school. I've been to a grammar school, and it was, the university was the route you take, and then you go off into industry, and that's the path that you should tread. And a lot of my friends have trodden that path really successfully, but my route was slightly different. So after a couple of trips over to New Zealand and a bit of traveling, I sort of reached 21 and didn't really know what I was doing, where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do. So I started working in a local restaurant where my family are from in the northwest of the UK. And I was just picking up some casual shifts behind the bar. It was a gastropub, a very well recognized gastropub, still is, in fact.
Do you want to name drop it?
It's called the Freemasons at Wizzle. If you have a look at it, I think it just recently was awarded the top 3 gastropub in the UK. It's a really good sound establishment. But what that gave me was an insight into outstanding customer service within a hospitality setting. And before I knew it, I was working there full time. They put me through a sommelier course, so I was, learning about wine, viniculture and viticulture. And so I was then able to sort of re-engage my sort of learning side, my academic side, and put it into, actual practice. And whilst it doesn't seem like it's, it's just a job in a restaurant, what it gave me was that understanding of, I know what a 70, 80-hour work week looks like, and I enjoy it. I thrive off it. It gives me that adrenaline hit to, go home at 2 a.m. after a long shift and be back in at 9 a.m. the next day. It really taught me the ethos of hard work. So through that process, I've stayed there for a couple of years, and at that point, it was time for me to start to grow and move on. And so I went up to work in a hotel up in Scotland, which I won't name for various different reasons. It wasn't such a positive experience, shall we say.
Fair enough.
But in the end, it gave me some more experience within the kind of the hotel industry and that side of things. And actually, it's what brought me to Cambridge via Newmarket. So an interesting journey, but that's how I ended up. I found a job at Citystay, and as I said, it was a temporary contract that turned into a permanent contract. And 9 years on, I've gone from being a sales and reservations executive to being the managing director, and I've been very fortunate to have been tutored and mentored through that process, in particularly by Neil Fernandez, who I mentioned earlier, but by all the sort of the board of directors and all the people that I have worked with on that journey.
That's really interesting. Declan, just going back, When you were younger, what did you think that you wanted to be when you grew up, or were you not quite sure?
Um, I don't suppose I was ever really sure. I think, when you're at school and you look at sort of work experience, I went to
Hmm.
do my work experience in a stockbrokers. I did actually do a year at university, and I was studying international relations. And I've always had sort of an interest in sort of current affairs, politics, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
Um, but nothing ever really drew me to a career within that sort of industry. I enjoyed sort of maths at school, but I never studied economics, and I think that's probably one thing I look back and think I would have liked to have done, because although I've learned sort of a very practical application of finance and economics through my job now, um, I think I possibly could have gone into something along those lines, maybe, but I didn't really have my heart set on anything in particular. I didn't really know, like a lot of people, I guess.
Wow, that's really interesting, and it just so happened that you came across something that piqued your interest, and you became really passionate about it.
Mm.
So I guess the hospitality industry has been hit quite badly, through the whole COVID pandemic. What's been your experience, of the whole COVID pandemic, and also any issues that you've overcome?
Yeah, I mean, certainly it's an experience that I wouldn't be, desperate to repeat like a lot of people, I'm sure. But it was a really, really interesting time. It showed me and gave and gave me an insight into just how robust and how resilient we as an organization were. So we had diversified our offerings, as I explained at the start, and we had the various revenue streams from the different brands that we operate under the group umbrella. And we were fortunate enough to have that because it enabled us to sort of pivot
Mm.
and move where the opportunities were. And that was one thing that I found particularly exciting. There was an excitement in that challenge of, okay, this is the set of circumstances that we're presented with. How can we manipulate this to the absolute maximum? And through that period, we were still committed to our growth plans. We continued to grow through that time, despite facing, major challenges with, operating procedures, staffing issues at that time. The fact that people were restricted, they couldn't really travel. So a lot of the business that comes into the service department company is corporate travel, and that tap just turned off. So we had to very, very quickly think, how are we going to get through this? What are we going to do? What can we put in play that is going to, get us through this period? And we got through that period. I mean, we're still here. We're bigger than we were. We're more robust than we were, more resilient than we were. And it's given us a springboard for continuing our growth plans. So, a very interesting time, difficult time, sleepless nights, long days, but that was the same for everybody. And I think we, as an organization, embraced that challenge rather than shy away from it. And it's sad when you see other hospitality companies falling by the wayside and closing and shutting down, and people losing jobs and livelihoods, and that is it's awful. But yeah, it was an interesting time.
Do you know, it's fantastic, because I know that before we came on here, we were having a bit of a chat, and we were talking about sort of how difficult situations always sort of inspire opportunity, and you've just got to go out and find it, whereas otherwise you might not look for it because you're in a situation with comfy slippers. So well done you on on sort of embracing the challenge and just tackling it head on, and coming out up front, and looking back saying, do you know what, we did it. It has been tough for everyone. But you know, good on you for looking for the opportunity there. So, Declan, thinking about you know, sort of life and business, what would you say your biggest learnings have been?
Slow down. I think it's probably uh, a, a really it's an interesting one, but I'll explain sort of what I mean with that. I think when I was a younger man, and with less experience, I was very forthright and would always charge for the finish. You know, whatever that was. I played a lot of sport, very competitive. That's always been in my sort of mindset to get to the finish line as fast as you possibly can. But as I've sort of got a bit older and developed more life experience and also, you know, business experience, giving myself and giving yourself the time and the space to reflect and slow down and just consider things has, you know, paid dividends. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things that I've learned for me, because I can still be that, you know, we're doing this and we're doing it today, and everybody, you know, and there's a time and a place for that. And I think that I can use that at the right times to inspire and motivate, you know, the team and people to come on the journey that we're on together. But also giving myself the time to reflect and think, okay, what can we learn from this? Is that always the right decision to do that straight away? And just being a little bit more considered has probably led to better decision making and having a better decision making process.
That sounds like fantastic learnings there, Declan. So speaking about, you know, inspiring, you were talking about inspiring your team. Who inspires you? You know, who comes into mind when you think of success, and why?
I think that's a really difficult question to answer, for two reasons, really. I think the first thing I would say is, you know, what truly defines success is different from person to person. Absolutely. And if you are driven by, you know, materialism, then success to you is going to look very different to somebody who is less driven by that. So I think when I look to my sort of personal life, as I've mentioned, I am very much, you know, I've always been involved and play and compete in sports and things like that. So it would be really simple to say, you know, Tiger Woods, for example. I mean, what an incredibly talented and successful golfer. But you could also look at him and say, well, you know, some questionable personal decisions there as well, and some challenges that he's faced. So that's really difficult to answer. But what I think, how I would define success is by being able to provide an environment where people are comfortable enough to feel like they can express themselves as best they possibly can without any fear of making mistakes or something like that. So I think, to use a sporting analogy, as I mentioned earlier, I spent a bit of time in New Zealand playing cricket, and cricket's always been very close to my heart. But if you think about the sort of previous England captain, Owen Morgan, who created a culture where he wanted his players and the team to be able to express themselves without any fear of failure. And yes, they achieved success within that, but that culture that's created, that's the real success, you know, where anybody from diverse backgrounds, wherever it may be, feels comfortable enough to be absolutely themselves without fear of making mistakes. And that's where progress happens, right? Because people can challenge and they can say, well, no, we can do it better than that. You know, let's challenge the norm. That for me is how I would define success, I think.
Do you know what, Declan? I have to agree with you. You know, the best way to learn and to grow is to do it and make mistakes, and not be scared of making mistakes.
No.
You know, perfection's not success. You know, learning and growth, you know, for me is, you know, that's what success is. So no, that's a really interesting share. So in terms of the future, Declan, what does it look like? And you know, are there any challenges that you might anticipate on the journey?
Yeah, absolutely. I think 2023 for the Citystay group is a year that we've set for consolidation. You know, we've gone through this aggressive growth strategy. We've gone through the pandemic. We need to give ourselves this 12-month window to sort of breathe out, as I mentioned earlier, just slow down, reflect, you know, reflect on the journey that we've been on and set out the next journey for the next 5 or 10 years. But build ourselves a platform that will enable us to do so in this 12 months. So as an organization, okay, we're sort of 15 years old, but you know, in business terms, we're very adolescent. And I'm sure you know, do you remember your actual adolescent phase as a human? You started to experience things and feel things that were completely new for you.
Mm.
We're on that growth trajectory as an organization where we're very much in that adolescent period now. So we're starting to feel things, different emotions, dealing with different challenges of an organization of our size now. And that's can be hard at times. That can be difficult because it's virgin territories for everybody. You know, there's things that we're dealing with that we've never had to deal with before. So learning all about it can be hard, and there are certain things that crop up within there, whether it's, you know, how we finance our business, how we structure the organization, how we now have to look at who we are as employers maybe a little bit more because expectations are changing. We're a slightly bigger organization now than we were 3 years ago, you know, so we have to have an increased focus on our ESG. And these things are absolutely pivotal to laying the foundation for the next period of growth. Because if we don't get them right, then that growth will be more challenging than it needs to be.
Yeah.
So those will be our challenges. You know, how can we improve our governance? You know, our mission statement is to be the best in class, but that doesn't just mean delivering a best in class customer experience. It's about our employees' experience as well. Are we contributing to the local environment? And I don't just mean, you know, from a sustainability point of view, but you know, what are we adding to the microeconomy of Cambridge, the UK, and so on, you know? So these are the challenges that will face us, I think, and the questions that will be asked of us that weren't asked of us when we were a smaller organization, because it didn't really matter at that time. So that's, I guess, what the future looks like. We get through this period of consolidation, we review and challenge ourselves to be the best we can internally, to provide the platform for the next phase of growth.
Sounds fantastic, Declan. Absolutely love it. So you spoke a lot there about reflection. So I'm going to put you on the spot now. What advice would you give your 18-year-old self?
Well, I like everybody have made a lot of mistakes, you know, in my life. A lot of some pretty bad mistakes, some mistakes with some pretty severe consequences. And I would probably tell an 18-year-old myself that just listen a bit more to those people that are around you, you know, appreciate their experience. And you don't know everything just yet, you know, take it on board and, you know, let it percolate. Don't just dismiss everybody else's opinion. You know, listen to things and consider. Try to be a bit more balanced. I think as a young man, you know, you've got that kind of arrogance and confidence of youth. Perhaps you're a bit ignorant to challenges and pressures that are on other people. That would be yeah, something that I would tell my 18-year-old self, to be a bit more considered and considerate.
Yeah, do you know what, that sounds like great advice. I think yeah, definitely good for any 18-year-old out there, really. So Declan, just before we finish, is there anything else that we should know about the Citystay group? Maybe anything that you're working at the moment, or just anything else that you want to share?
I think that's an interesting one. I'm going to need a minute just to have a think about that one. As I've sort of touched on, earlier, what we're working on as a group is really laying those foundations for the next phase of, the next 5 to 10 years growth. Yeah. And we're trying to implement, more fairness, more accountability, increased responsibility, being transparent, to try and make our organization the best it possibly can be, for our customers, but for our employees, for everybody that's associated with the Citystay group. And ultimately, I want it to become a place that prospective customers, prospective employees, existing employees can go out and promote and say, what I can see what that organization stands for. I can see clearly in how it treats its customers, the people that it works with, its employees. That is a company whose values and whose ethics are really evident. They're not people that, they show, they don't tell. That's what I would like for the people to see with the Citystay group, and that's what I would like people to know about the Citystay group, that it is that kind of ethos that really drives us, and what motivates everybody within the organization to push on and be the best we can be. In terms of, what was the other part of the question? Did you say there was like
just
2
anything
parts?
Else you want to share, or anything that you're working on at the moment?
So yeah, so obviously, we're working on the development of our portfolio beyond this next 12 months. And, when we're looking at new projects and new properties or new locations to take on board, that they're long processes. It can take, 18 months, 2 years. So very much as part of my role is to, identify those opportunities. And I can't give details and information of it right here, but, that's what we're working on, to secure that long-term sustainable growth of the business, really.
Okay, so on that note then, if people want to get in touch with you, or to find out more, what's the best way for them to do it, Declan?
The best way, I think, would always be just pick up the phone. If you want to have a conversation with me about anything related to, the Citystay group or anything at all, it would be to give me a ring on any of our telephone numbers. And as for me, we don't have too much of a screening system. We're available on the phones if you need to speak to management and things like that. So if you do want any more information, or just want to have a conversation about anything that you've heard today, then yeah, just pick up the phone and ask for Declan, and whoever takes the call will be happy to put you through, and I'll be happy to have a chat.
Oh, that's fantastic. And listen, what I'll do, Declan, I will put your phone number in the share with this recording as well. So
thank you.
Listen, it's been really, really fascinating. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
No, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks.